I just love the way his dad looks. I can't wait until he looks like that. So that's the top of your timeline. So what about highlighting important events from your life? Now, take this photo of me and Priscilla. This is from the first road trip that we took together. It's our first vacation, so it's a really meaningful photo for me, and I want to highlight it on my timeline. So how do I do this? Well, you can just hover over any story that you want on timeline, you get this star, and you can click it, and you get a big version of the story that you can just feature on your timeline as a major event. And starring also tells timeline what is important to you, so that as it helps you summarize your past events, it just calls out all the important stuff and features all the stuff that you want it to. So of course, if there's something that you want to hide, like old wall post from a friend that's not relevant, you just hover over it and get rid of it. And if there's something that timeline missed because it's behind one of those gray dots, you just go ahead and you hover over the gray dot, and you can add it. It's right there. You have complete control over everything on your timeline. You can control what's there, but you can also control who sees everything. So if you want to see, you can just glance over any story, and so you can see it, and you can change the privacy in line by just clicking on it, and there we go. This is a cool one, so let's make it public. So timeline is for you to express who you are. And you have complete control over your timeline, what you show there, how you display it, and who can see it. Now, one of the things that I've just found amazing with timeline is how different people's timelines can feel. Here's a traveler's timeline. And as you scroll through it, you can just see all these beautiful pictures from the trips that she's been on. It's really neat. It feels like her. It feels really unique. Here is a musician's timeline. And running through it, I mean, the nice cover right at the top, and you can see the instruments that they're playing, photos from their gigs, hanging out with the band. You just looking at this, I mean, without even getting into the content, you just get this nice visceral feel for who this person is. It feels really cool. Now, of course, I've showed most of the stuff today on web, just because with the bigger screen, it's easier to explain it. But all of this stuff just works beautifully on fully immersive mobile devices. And here's a runner's timeline on mobile. And again, you just see all the photos of her running, all the way back to when she was a little kid. So that's timeline. It's the story of your life. You have all your stories, all your apps, and a new way to express who you are. And now, I'd like to show you a little video that we made about timeline. We're really proud of Timeline. We think it's an important next step to help you tell the story of your life. But even more important, in order to make this work, we've had to invent a completely new class of apps. So that's what I want to talk to you about next. The next version of Open Graph and a completely new class of apps. Facebook's mission is to make the world more open and connected. And the way that we do this is by helping you map out all of the things that you're connected to so you can have a more personal experience in all of the apps and things that you do. We often talk about this map that we're helping you create as a graph of connections. And in 2007, at our very first F8, I introduced the concept of the social graph, all of the relationships between people in the world. Last year, we introduced the concept of the open graph as not only the map of all the relationships in the world, but the map of all of the connections in the world. And as a first step towards this, we made it so that you can add anything you wanted to the map and that you could connect to it by liking it. And this made it so that you could connect to an order of magnitude more things than you could before. This year, we're taking the next step. We're going to make it so that you can connect to anything you want in any way you want. So now, you don't have to like a book. You can just read a book, which is good because you've probably read about 10 times more books than you'd want to like on Facebook anyway. And you don't have to like a movie. You can just watch a movie, which is also pretty good because you've probably also watched about 10 times as many movies as you'd want to like on Facebook. You can just eat a meal. You can hike a trail. You can listen to a song. You can connect to anything in any way you want. And we think that this is going to make it so that you can make an order of magnitude more connections than you could before. Sometimes I think about what we're doing with the Open Graph as if we're helping to define a brand new language for how people connect. And when we started, the vocabulary was really limited. You can only express a small number of basic things, like who you were friends with. Then last year, when we introduced the Open Graph, we added nouns. So you could like anything that you wanted. And this year, we're adding verbs. We're going to make it so that you can connect to anything in any way you want. Now, building this language for how people connect is pretty important. So we're doing it carefully and slowly. And every year, we take the next step, and we make some new social apps possible, and we make it so that people can express themselves in new ways. So how is this going to help you express yourself in new ways? Well, one thing that we've heard over and over again is that people have things that they want to share, but they don't want to annoy their friends by putting boring stuff in their news feeds. So you have stuff that you'd share, but you don't want to annoy your friends. So if the problem is that when you post something, it goes into newsfeed and takes up all your friends' attention, then our solution is to create a new place that's lighter weight where you can see lighter weight stuff that's going on. And that's how we came up with Ticker. So Ticker is a lightweight stream of everything that's going on around you. And something might catch your attention out of the corner of your eye, but because it's moving by so quickly, you'll never feel annoyed by a friend if their lightweight activity shows up there. So when you share a post, it goes into newsfeed. But when you add activity through the Open Graph, it goes into Ticker, and it goes onto your timeline, but it's not going to show up in newsfeed unless there's a particularly interesting pattern that your friends are going to want to see. So that's what this update to the Open Graph is going to do. Before today, there was really no socially acceptable way to express lightweight activity, and now there is. And we think that this is going to make it so that people can express an order of magnitude more things than they could before. So that's what we're going to do today. That's what this next version of Open Graph is all about. We spent the last year making it so that you can connect to anything you want in any way you want. You just define an action and you publish it. That's it. It's really easy. It's simple, but it's really, really powerful. And we think that this is going to make it possible to build a completely new class of social apps that weren't possible before. So what kind of apps? well, a lot of apps. We believe that eventually almost all apps that you use are going to be social, but in the world there's a natural spectrum from behaviors that are really naturally social to ones that aren't. And the ones that are naturally social are going to be the ones that turn into social apps first. So on one side of the spectrum, you have really social things like communication and games. And there are already social apps for those. And on the other side of the spectrum are things that are really sensitive and private, like healthcare, finance, that I think there probably won't be social apps for a long time. Now, with this update to Open Graph, we're going to expand the set of industries and products that are becoming social to now include a couple more. And first is everything to do with media. Music, movies, TV, news, books, all really naturally social. We think that there are going to be great Open Graph apps in this category. And the next is what we call lifestyle apps. They're apps for helping you keep track of and expressing all kinds of different things about your life. Your runs, your bike rides, your cooking and eating, your sleeping, your happiness, your fashion, anything you want. So today, we're making it possible to build a completely new class of apps and to rethink a lot of industries at the same time. So let's take a closer look. The Open Graph is going to enable apps that primarily focus on two types of things. The first is helping you fill out your timeline, which we've already discussed. And the second is helping you discover new things through your friends. And we're going to do this in three ways. With frictionless experiences, real-time serendipity, and finding patterns in your friends' activity. So let's start with frictionless experiences. Now, I don't know how many of you guys saw this internet meme that was going around of the classic game Mario, where this iconic image where he finds his first mushroom and all of a sudden it pops up a box prompting you to share it on Facebook. I cried when I saw this. Now, I appreciate that whoever made this realized that all modern games should be social, but I also empathize with it because it really is one of the worst experiences on our platform today when you're just in the middle of some app doing something and all of a sudden it just pops something up and asks you to share. So today we want to make it so that this is you no longer have to do this. So if you're using one of these new Open Graph apps, you're going to be able to add activity to your timeline without ever having to see one of these prompts again. You can still publish to the stream if you want. Yeah, no, I'm happy. You can still publish to your stream if you'd like. But if your goal is to just add lightweight activity, you'll never have to see one of these prompts again. So the best way to think about these kind of apps is that you're connecting the app and your timeline together. You're adding all of the activity and history in the app to your timeline, and you're going to automatically keep them in sync going forward. So that way anything that you do in the app gets added to your timeline. So to make this work, we completely redesigned the permissions dialog around the idea that the reason why you're adding an app is that you can add this activity. So in this case, I'm going to add Spotify. And I showed you this before, but it's worth looking at again in the context of what I just discussed. So you'll notice that it's really clear to me what Spotify is going to do. Right at the top it says, this is what Spotify is going to add to your timeline. The songs you've listened to, your radio stations, the albums that you listen to, and you get this nice big story of what it's going to look like. So you just get this preview, and you're never surprised. And you can control who sees it right there. Now, I see this story. I think it's pretty cool. I want that on my timeline. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Add to Timeline. And now Spotify is on my timeline. And now it can add activity for me. And I'm off to the app. And of course, I can always modify these settings later if I want to. Now, from here on out, it's a frictionless experience. Because Spotify made clear to me early what kind of activity it was going to publish, and I saw the story and I was like, yeah, that looks cool, I want that. Now, Spotify isn't going to have to prompt me every time I do something, and it's going to add activity to my timeline. So it's a frictionless experience. So how is this going to help you discover new things through your friends? Well, it turns out that your friends are already doing a lot of things around you all the time. They just don't have a good way to share it today. So as soon as we light this up, all of these dots that are out there are going to be connected, and you're going to discover a lot of things that your friends are already doing around you right now. We call this real-time serendipity. So now, even before I start using Spotify, I can see what my friends are doing live as they listen to songs in my ticker. And this creates a lot of serendipitous discovery. So if one of my friends listens to a new song, they'll just tick right in, and okay, that looks cool, so you just hover over it, and we can play it in line, which we're not going to do right now. But it'll just start playing in Spotify. Now I'm listening to the song with my friend, and my music is synced up with theirs. It's a really cool experience. You have to experience it for yourself, but you discover a huge amount of new music this way. Now, of course, if you play a song from a friend, or if another friend does, then that activity is going to be added to Ticker, so your friends or your friends' friends can see it. And in this way, listening can spread really quickly through the graph. It's a really neat phenomenon to see. Now, some activity is more interesting than others. So if someone's listening to a song, that may be interesting for a few minutes. So Ticker is a great place to surface that. But let's say that something that's a bit rarer happens, or if there's some interesting pattern. For example, in this case, Dan has created a whole playlist. That doesn't happen every day. Or a bunch of my friends, in this case, just a couple, but I mean, these stories can get huge, just listen to the same artist at the same time. That's pretty cool. So those are patterns that are interesting, and Newsfeed has decided, okay, those are interesting enough things that we're going to highlight those because we want you to have an opportunity to discover them. Now, in this case, I happen to be a pretty big Green Day fan already, so of course you could click on this and it would just start playing in Spotify. I'm not going to do that here. I'll probably just go ahead and comment on Dan's taste. You finally discovered Green Day. Good work. It's amazing how much music you can discover through your friends.